All right, so here's a story of how I managed to fail a drug test without actually having ever done drugs at that point in my life or have actually taken the test. So it's 20, what year was it? It was 2013, and I was recently divorced. And prior to that point, I had been a stay-at-home dad, and I was desperately looking for work. My wife had moved out about 9 months prior to that point, and I had been doing lots of odd jobs, but I was falling further and further behind. I'd applied to fast food restaurants and never got calls back, and it was getting a little ridiculous. But anyway, out of nowhere, I had applied for a assistant manager position at Family Dollar and was absolutely flabbergasted when I got a call back and they said they wanted to do an interview. Interview went great. The manager was a woman named Beth, and she hired me on the spot. Um, she said, of course, it was dependent on me taking a drug test, and I said, okay, that's not a big deal. I've never done drugs in my life. And she handed me a piece of paper and said, you need to go to this address, and they'll get you all taken care of. I said, okay. So I immediately went over there because I wanted to cross all the I's and dot all the T's. All right, let me see if I can tell you a little about this job. So I would be responsible for either opening the store or closing the store. And the schedule would vary widely throughout the week. Like Monday, you could come in, you could open, and then Tuesday, you could be closing the store. You would be responsible for stocking the shelves, which makes sense. You would be responsible for either getting money out from the bank in the morning or taking the nightly deposit to the bank. You would be responsible for unloading the trucks for new merchandise that would be coming in. And these trucks could come in at any time. They could come in on your day off, and although you'd get paid for unloading the truck, you'd have to drop everything that you were doing and you'd have to go unload the truck. And all of this for 25 cents over the minimum wage at the time, which was $6 and change or $7 and change. It wasn't a lot, but it was consistent money that I did not have at the time, and I accepted it. Now, on with the program about the drug test that I, failed. So I went over to the lab and I handed them the sheet, and they said, "Well, what is this?" I said, "Well, it's the sheet that they gave me." And they said, "Oh, okay, so this isn't the piece of paper that you need. This is." Then they went and they had a stack of forms from other clientele that had come in, and it was like this multi um, carbon copy tractor feed paper that I should have gotten one of those sheets. And I said, okay, well, that is not what I got here. So let me call Beth, the assistant manager, or sorry, the manager, and talk to her. So I called her, and she was, for whatever reason, the interview went really well, but she was all kinds of bent out of shape. And she saw, like, well, I don't know what's going on. That's all I've got. Let me look into it. And I said, okay. I hung up the phone, and I'm looking at the piece of paper in my hand that she gave me, and it said something to the effect of, if you have any questions, call this number. I said, okay, I'll call the number. So I called the number, and they affirmed that yes, that particular form was not the right form for this particular test, and that I would need one of those multi-part forms, and that the paper that she gave me was for a specific lab that wasn't even anywhere in like a 500-mile like region, and they had no idea why I even had that. So I needed to go back to her and get the proper form, and then I could take the test. And I said, okay. So I hung up the phone and waited for her to call. And about 4 hours later, she called, and she says, "I'm going to rescind my job offer." And I said, "Why? Why are you? What's going on? What did I do?" And she says, "Well, I called the drug lab there and they told me that you called. Do you remember me telling you that I would take care of it? Well, I told you I'd take care of it, and here you are going behind my back, and you're doing this." And I was like, "Whoa, Beth, I had the paper in my hand, and it had the number on there. It said if you have any questions, to give them a call." And so I did, because I really want this job, and I'm just trying to do everything right. And she didn't accept my answer. She says, "Well, if you're willing to go behind my back or something like this, then what happens if you actually have the job? And there's no telling what you'll do. So no, I don't want you. I don't want you here." It was the absolute best thing that she could have done, because, like I said, I would have that incredibly horrifying schedule there, and all the responsible duties for not even enough money to live on. 3 days later, I got a call back from the place that I've been employed at now since June 3rd, 2013. I work for CNS Wholesale Grocers. I've been working in their logistics department since that point, and they hired me at almost 3 times the rate at I would have been at Family Dollar. And like I said, it was the absolute best thing that she could have done, was not hiring me, because when CNS called, I probably would have been really, really stupid and be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I've already accepted another position." Because, yeah, I'm like that. So that is the story of how I managed to fail a drug test without taking a drug test or even having done drugs at that.